the sky through the aircraft. Meanwhile, in South Vietnam, in May 1969. As they prepare to be sent into action again, the platoon is waiting in a nearby village. Lang Willie tries to chat up a local lady while his mates joke around in the deuce and a half. Platoon Sergeant SFC Worcester gets him on the truck. Sergeant France arrives in a jeep, and the truck drives off. France recounts his rest and recuperation leave with a round-eye nurse. Worcester teases the new guys into wearing flak jackets. He also mentions the A Shau Valley. Near another bustling village, the men disembark. Worcester tells France he is getting the new guys while he has to break in a new lieutenant. After being taken under the wings of their battle-weary squad commander, Staff Sergeant Adam France, the trainees spend their early days working in the heat and dirt building trenches. The new men are having a good time and making jokes. After Lang Willie makes an inappropriate remark about Beletsky's wife, the two get into a physical confrontation and then shake hands. Worcester and France go to a brothel, where they spend some time in the hot pool with a couple of prostitutes. While France seems calm and collected while the other four talks about the battle, Worcester is becoming more anxious. Lieutenant Eden has the 5 new soldiers fill out the necessary paperwork. While Doc and his 2 companions, both of whom are African American, visit the village, they are delighted to see France. It has been said that they plan to make their way back into the A Shau Valley to attack the North Vietnamese army at their hilltop outposts close to the Laotian border. McDaniel is only there for a limited period and would want to be stationed in the rear division. Beletsky receives a tongue lashing from Doc as he is instructed to wash his teeth properly in front of the other 5 new men. In the morning, the team takes some time to relax in the trenches. Worcester drops a few indications that they will be returning to A Shau Valley. France is making an effort to educate the fresh recruits about the enemy Han, the North Vietnamese army, and the importance of not underestimating Mr. Nathaniel Victor. After that, the group had fun playing in the water. While a civilian RV trailer is being brought into camp, Lang Willie and Galvin talk lightly with the driver. The guys engage in conversation over lunchtime and often bring up the topic of returning home. Motown is skeptical about McDaniel's prospects of coming home and relates a story about him traveling back to Detroit on emergency leave. McDaniel is hopeful about returning home. Beletsky attempts to participate in the discourse, but Doc quickly shuts him down. Lang Willie and Galvin discuss their strategies for having sensual encounters with the natives. When the incoming fire from the opposing artillery causes the other troops to rush for shelter, Duffy takes this time to reflect. As the earth is shaken by the artillery shells, a little girl sobs for her mother, who has just passed away. France will call for a truce as soon as the artillery fire from the enemy stops. Doc makes a desperate plea for a fallen soldier or a new recruit. Later that evening, the men are at Mama San's brothel, where they are drinking, dancing, and playing cards as they wait for their turns. After drinking too much, Doc gets into a fight with Lang Willie. The Italian is upset that everyone refers to him as an alphabet. It has been confirmed by Worcester that they would be returning to the A Shau Valley in the morning in order to fight the North Vietnamese army. The airborne soldiers are retrieved the next morning by a group of Huey helicopters, which arrive in a squadron. They are heading towards a valley in the mountains. The men are tense and silent. They exit the aircraft at the landing zone, and the aircraft takes off. It was the 10th of May in 1969. On the first day of the assault on Hamburger Hill, the battalion moves cautiously through the dense forest of the jungle. They fall to the ground as gunfire breaks out in the area. They are encouraged to advance by the sergeants. However, despite the loss of McDaniel, the adversary retreats. The emphasis is now placed on Washburn. The gentlemen use this time to unwind by doing things like playing cards, reading magazines, and writing letters. France is upset that a single person lost their life. When Doc is upset, Motown uses the phrase "it don't mean nothing, not a thing" to make him feel better. Lieutenant Eden and the sergeants debate the instructions, which state that they are to go out the next day at 0800 hours and push the enemy off of Hill 937, a ridge of the mountain Dong Ap Bia in central Vietnam, where they have gathered, where they have congregated. Day 2, the 11th of May. SFC Worcester maintains a constant forward motion as an observation helicopter flies above. Mortar shells fired by the enemy begin to fall all around them. In retaliation, artillery fire from the United States pounded the hill. After some time has passed, a violent downpour begins just as the guys are putting the bodies in body bags. France joins the new men for conversation and hot chocolate in the evenings when they hang around. They tune in to Radio Hanoi, which constantly urges them to end the conflict. The conflict is still going on in the background. A few days later, France thumps them awake just as another unit is making its way back. Fighting with hand grenades and light weapons can be heard up on the hill. It is the 15th of May. They engage in close quarters combat with the adversarial North Vietnamese Army forces. Aircraft swoop down and begin dropping bombs and white phosphorus on the hill's highest point as they advance. The members of the North Vietnamese Army retreat into their respective bunkers for cover. The platoon overruns the enemy bunker, and they continue to make their way up the hill. Huey helicopters belonging to the United States Army fly above and unintentionally fire at their own soldiers. Lieutenant Eden makes frantic efforts to phone in for assistance in stopping them. Additional fatalities as the battalion retreats down the hill to take a breather. The aircraft above once again napalm the summit of the hill. Lieutenant Eden is trying to get an increased supply of food and water. Motown gives Beletsky permission to use his tape player to listen to an audio letter recorded by his wife, Claire. Beletsky becomes agitated when the batteries run out, at which point he makes a racially insensitive remark and begins to fight with Motown. The 16th of May. The war continued as the unit attacked Hill 937 yet again. Doc realigns the soldier's dislocated shoulder and encourages him to continue moving. The guys discuss things and read letters during their break for lunch. Beanstalk receives a letter addressed to him as Dear John from his girlfriend informing him that they are ending their relationship because she has taken the opinion of her friends, who believe that it is immoral to date a military serviceman. The 17th of May. The unit continues to advance while being subjected to continuous gunfire. As they were making their way back down the hill after a long day of struggle, they were confronted by a news film team that made fun of their unsuccessful attacks on Hill 937. France angrily yells at them, telling them they will seize the hill. While the team is taking it easy, they talk about the gray areas of life back at home. After much back and forth, Doc and Beletsky had come to an agreement. France shares some personal information with you. The 18th of May. The soldiers make their way slowly up a hill for another attack in the pouring rain, which has turned the terrain into a ruined, muddy wasteland. Guy Gone has passed away, and Doc is brought to tears before being shot in the abdomen. The Americans had difficulty navigating the slick terrain and ended up sliding backward in the mud. After some time has passed, Doc is sedated and prepared for the medical evacuation. He is no longer experiencing any pain and is overjoyed to be heading home. According to Lieutenant Eden, the command officer, who goes by the name Black Jack, wants them to continue moving aggressively. The squad is now silent and solemn. Sergeant First Class Worcester expresses his sadness for the way folks back home are experiencing. When he was injured and sent back home the year before, he experienced the pessimism of several college hippies who told him, "Don't mean nothing." He relates this experience. Worcester relates to them how, upon his return to his hometown, he was met with hostility from people of all walks of life, including his own wife, who was shamelessly cheating on him. This was due to the fact that members of the United States Army are known as baby killers or simply killers by the hostile American public, which has been completely consumed by the anti-war movement. Worcester's hometown is located in the United States. Because he felt so alone, he decided to sign up for another tour of duty in the military. The 20th of May. The squad moves once again toward the front lines in preparation for an all-out attack on the hill. The troops are so close to one another that they can see the faces of the North Vietnamese Army soldiers who are returning fire. Lieutenant Eden is told by his command officer to fight not to speak, and shortly after, he is struck by a mortar shell that causes him to lose one arm. Worcester administers a morphine injection to him. The Americans make their way up the slope in an effort to eliminate the bunkers. Sergeant First Class Worcester makes his way through the haze, but he is already in a coma and covered in blood when he finally collapses and passes away in France's arms. Motown was discovered to have died in a crater. Beletsky makes an effort to perk up France, who seems bewildered. They continue to climb the steep slope. Bullet holes may be seen everywhere around Beanstalk. Languilly is killed by a bayonet shot from an opposing soldier when he is near the ridge line. Again, France is astonished. France is the one who puts an end to the North Vietnamese Army soldier who is responsible for Languilly's death. Beletsky urges the unit to continue with its advance. Crawling to the top, France blasts the remaining North Vietnamese Army soldiers where they are, and then he and the few other unit survivors who have made it through join Beletsky and Washburn to rest. As additional American forces come up and a Huey flies over the killing fields, it is clear that the war has been won. The North Vietnamese Army had retreated from the battlefield. The phrase "Welcome to Hamburger Hill" is written on a sign that someone places. Beletsky does not respond to the request for a sitrep that was broadcast over the radio by the CO identified as Red 6. The movie ends during the 11th day battle for Hamburger Hill. 70 American troops were killed in action or passed away as a result of their injuries, while 372 other men were injured. The 9 attacks that were made on the hill resulted in 70% of the 1st platoon being killed or wounded. During the conflict, there was also a loss of around 500 to 600 members of the North Vietnamese Army. Because the enemy firing from the North Vietnamese Army holding Hill 937 was so fierce, it converted the invading troops into hamburger meat, and the hill became known as Hamburger